Tion Tair, Viniska Holano Meralo, Ro, Barakatana Yotsera Mero. Melach meis machaya matzmiach Yeshua, then amana tali lachayos.
Excuse me, please. Seagull ever say Ram Alpha Salam Bisman Karov, Yachon Pleta Saint, no Fleta Sama Basis Relachain, Lachesel Rafin Rasov Namara Main Hako, Havagoy Lahanus Lukarla Tarcoin Krav Yamod, Sviheshban Moshe Hakohain, Roshana San Thomas Obik Dusho So, Betaman Jacob Badanoilachem, Chayim Kochem Hayom.
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Adonai, Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Adonai, Melech Haolam, Asher Baruch Adonai, Mikol Amim, V'Nas Alana Esther, so Baruch Adonai,
Amen.
Amen. Vayeshev Yaakov, Beretz Migurei Aviv, Beretz Canaan, Ele Toldos Yaakov, Yosef, Ben Shvasrei Shana Haya, Roes Echav Baton, V'hunar, Es B'nei Vilha, Ves B'nei Zilpa Neshei Aviv, Vayave Yosef, Es Libasam Ra Lavihem, V'Yisrael, Ahav Es Yosef Mikol Banav, Kiven Zekunim Hulo, V'asalo Kison Es Pasi. Amen. V'Yisrael, Ahav Es Yosef Mikol Banav, V'Yiruachav, Ki Oso, Ahav Avihem Mikol Achav, V'Yisnu Oso, V'lo Yachlu Dabro L'Shalom, V'Yachalom Yosef Chalom, V'Yagel Lechav, V'Yasifu Tzino Oso, V'Yomer Alehem, Shemuna, HaChalom Hazeh Asher Chalamti, V'hinei, Anachnu, Melmim Elomim B'Soch HaSadeh, V'hinei, Kamalu Masiv V'gam Yitzavah, V'hinei Sesubena Alu Mosechem, V'tishtachavena Alu Masiv.
Amod Habachor Harba Mitzvah Reuven God Ben Chaim Dov Shlishi.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch Adonai, Baruch Adonai.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olaved. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'chavanu Mikol Amim. V'Nas Alana Esther So. Baruch Adonai Noseinu Torah. Vayomru Lo Achav. Hamalach Timloch Aleinu. Imashol Timshol Banu. Vayosifu Tzino So. Al Chlom Asav Ve'al Dvarav. Vayachalom Od Chalom Acher. Vaysaber Oso Lechav. Vayomer, Hinei Chalamti Chalomot, V'hinei Hashemesh V'hayareach, V'achan Asok Kochavim, Mishtachavim Li, V'yisaper El Aviv, V'elechav, V'yigar Bo Aviv, Vayomer Lo, Ma Hachalom Hazeh Asher Chalamta, Havona Bo, Ani Bimcha V'checha, Lishtachavo Slucha Arza, Vayikanu Bo Echav, Ve'aviv Shamar Sadabar. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Nasa Lanu Torah Sames, B'chai Olam Natav Socheinu, Baruch Adonai Noseinu Torah.
Amen. Mishibar Chavasana Rosh Yaviv Baruch Hasabachar Ram Mitzvah Reuven God Ben Chaim Dov Babur Shalos Hara Chadamakum Chadataris Chazah Harish Baruch Yishmai V'Aslan Kol Sarah V'Sukkah V'Kaneg Amachla V'Shlach Baruch HaSlacha Chamas V'Yadav V'Klai Shalach Amen.
To the
Before the Hagbah, I'm making a Mishaberach for the sick people. If anyone has, please step down. David Shlomo, Vivarch Birape, as Hacholam Eli, as Yoel ben Miriam, as Aaron Svi ben Chayena, as Moshe ben Sarah Pesel, as Yosef Dov ben Sarah Cyril, as Yaakov ben Friel, as Rafael Michal Yitzchak Haledi ben Nechama Sarah, as David Zelig ben Sarah, as Shachna ben Ika, as Amram Elisha Yonasan ben Sarah Brindel, as Reuven Daniel ben Miriam, as Yehoshua ben Sarah, as Chaim ben Pesha, as Ashi Yeshayahu ben Chayav, as Yecheskel Shraga ben Chana, as Avraham ben Mendel.
Yeah. After, go to my chair. Anyone has some Muller to say, now is the time to come forward. A woman, all right, no man. El MullerFamilyArchive, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsem Menucha Nechana, Tachas Kanfei Hashchina, B'malos Kadosh Matar Kazara, Kimas Hiram, Es Nishmas, from a Fagi Bas, Avram Zev, Shahalchal Yalama, Babur Shem, Mishpachta, Nodrut Staka, Badas Karsish Masa, Began Aiden Tahem, Luchasal, Achem MullerFamilyArchive, Yastira, Avasesa Klevav, Lialamim, the Yitzrah, B'Srach, Chaim, Esnish Masa, and I will not lasa, B'Sonu Achamish Kavav, Shalom, V'Namar, Amen. MullerFamilyArchive, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsem Menucha Nechana, Tachas Kanfei Hashchina, B'malos Kadosh Matar.
Company tomorrow. Morgan is new bride. His wife is coming in the children. My son Mark is married.
Thanks. I waited for you and you ran down. I waited for you.
I tracked the
Put that thing in your mouth. That's forever now, Alan. Rafi. See, just like that.
Everybody go downstairs for tea. Yes.
There we go. Tickle, tickle. Okay.
Oh, pretty clean.
You give me the go ahead. Ready, Reuven?
It's on. You're on.
You give me the go ahead. Okay? Yeah, I'm ready. Are you ready?
You're on.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce
Muller.
the bar mitzvah boy, my son Reuven, to deliver his thoughts on this week's Sedra.
I am fortunate enough that the Torah readings that I will read this Shabbos alludes to my namesake many times. I can learn many lessons from Reuven. Bar mitzvah is a time for extra responsibilities. This is one reason Reuven did not end up the hero in the story of the selling of Joseph. He didn't fulfill his responsibilities as the firstborn Bechor of the family. To repeat the story of what happened, Joseph was disliked by his brothers because he gossiped on them. He also had dreams about them that Joseph would be king over the brothers and they would bow to him in the future. When the circumstances arose, the brothers took their flock out to graze and Joseph was sent to find them. The brothers used this opportunity to try to kill Joseph. Reuven knew he would be responsible, so he suggested that the brothers put Joseph into a pit, thinking that he would rescue him later. This was a big mistake for Reuven. Reuven then went back home to serve his father Jacob. We know this because the pasuk states, "Vayishma Reuven," which means Reuven just happened to hear them. If so, where was Reuven during the plotting? The Midrash says that it was his turn to care for his father. It is always important to honor your parents. The sages say Reuven was rewarded for speaking out first to save Yosef. When the Ari Miklat, cities of refuge, are mentioned in the Torah, the city in the portion of Reuven was mentioned first. Yehuda then came along and suggested that the brothers sell Yosef instead. They get rid of their brother and also make a profit. The brothers knew they could defend themselves because they knew that Abraham's ancestors were to be enslaved, so they reasoned that Yosef could fulfill the promise by himself. Secondly, the Ramban says that the brothers thought, who will ever know? They are going to a far-off country, the Ishmaelim, his buyers. Third of all, the Sforno says, it would be a midah k'neged midah, measure for measure, that Yosef wanted to be master over them, now he would be a slave. What exactly did Reuven do wrong and right, and what lessons can we learn? Firstly, he did try to save Yosef. Even though Reuven had the most to lose from Yosef taking over, he still opposed his brothers in their evil plot against Yosef. He figured that he'd be responsible, so he planned on rescuing him later. He was the Bechor, but still had to go with the flow and not outwardly say he would rescue him. He didn't do what was right because he had to do what his brothers did. In the pasuk it says the pit was empty, there was no water. Why is there a need for reiteration that there was no water in the pit, assuming that if it's empty, it for surely doesn't have water in it? Rashi says that this is to show us there were big scorpions and snakes in the pit. Ramban, though, explains it literally to show that the brothers didn't want to drown him in the pit. Why then, according to Rashi's opinion, did Reuven send Yosef in the pit if it had bad animals in it? Zohar answers this by saying that Reuven was hoping for divine intervention in the matter. Reuven thought that Yosef would have a better chance of surviving in the pit than against the anger of his brothers. We learn that Hashem is more likely to intercede between man and beasts than between two men possessing free will. We see that Reuven actually had a good intent. Then what did he do wrong? I have observed that what he did wrong was that he didn't finish the job, and he acted slowly. I have noticed too that Reuven was afraid to speak up for himself and not speak up for his position as Bechor. From Reuven not saving Yosef at the end, we learn that a person has to finish a mitzvah joyfully and completely. Yehuda also exhibited this by offering a solution to save Yosef, but not saving him completely. Rashi discusses that Reuven tried to save Yosef in order to escape being blamed himself and not as an act of love towards him. Rashi knows this because he was included with his brothers and still hated Yosef excessively. From this episode in the Chumash, I can learn that I must act with love towards my family and friends and be motivated by what is right and not for any reward. I would like to extend my gratitude to my wonderful parents who have brought me up and have taken me this far. My appreciation is fully extended to my grandparents who have given me 4 great role models, and to my brothers and sisters who always made sure I wouldn't be lonely around the house by quarreling with me and following me around.
I would like to now introduce Rabbi Yitzchak Merkin, who is the principal of Yeshiva High School, where Reuven is in the 7th grade.
As many of you might know around the community, that there's today at the yeshiva another bar mitzvah as well. And I have to tell you, as a result of this experience, I've gained a much deeper respect for Henry Kissinger with his famous shuttle diplomacy. I would like to share with you a short Dvar Torah, which I think is extremely appropriate to becoming a bar mitzvah. In this week's Sedra, the Torah tells us, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan, that Yaakov dwelled in the home of his father in the land of Canaan. Chazal analyze this word, Vayeshev, that he sat. What exactly are they trying to tell us in the many, many interpretations? One of the interpretations is that they saw much more of a desire of merely physically to sit, to dwell, but rather it was a determination to live a life of serenity. And the Torah says that Yaakov wanted to kind of remove himself, to relax, in which the Ribono Shel Olam's response was, this can't be. You, Mr. Tzaddik, who's going to be able to have tremendous calm and serenity in the world to come, you also expect it on this world as well? As a result of that, the Medrash continues, that the whole sorrows, trials, and tribulations with Yosef began. And one has to understand this Medrash. Seemingly, it's a criticism of Yaakov. But why? I mean, we have to understand, what does it mean he wanted to live a life of serenity? I mean, he wasn't going to Miami to retire to play cards. And what was he trying to do? Obviously, Yosef, in his desire for spiritual growth, felt that the mechanism to be able to achieve this growth is to kind of remove himself, to learn, to grow. And yet, the Torah seems to be highly critical. Why? And I think we see from this Chazal man's path towards spiritual growth. That the way to grow is to be in the middle of something, to deal with challenges, to overcome struggles. And that's what Chazal are telling us right now in this pasuk. His intentions were very pure. But the true route to spiritual growth is dealing with the trials and tribulations of life, because that's the only way for a person to achieve his true potential. I said it's appropriate to be coming to a bar mitzvah because beginning with the teenage years, there's no lack of trials and tribulations and many challenges that kids face today. Perhaps in our society today, it's a lot more difficult than when we grew up. And, you know, as parents, you know, I have a couple kids that are, you know, a little bit ahead. You know, it's always, you never stop worrying about kids. There's always the concern. These are, you know, you have kind of sigh of relief. I got this part, but what looms ahead? And needless to say, there are never any guarantees in this world. But sometimes, you can kind of take stock, look at kids where they are at quote, during the formative years, and kind of get a picture what they will probably be like X number of years in the future. And I think in Reuven's case, as I mentioned, there are never guarantees. But Baruch Hashem, there's no question about the path which he's forging. I have to tell you the truth. My role is principal of yeshiva. He's been in the school a couple of months. I could get up there and tell you how well I know him. That's not really true, because I really haven't had as yet the opportunity really to get to know him. But I do, as principal, have the opportunity to get to know him through the teachers. And when I speak to the Rabbeim about the kids, when I discuss about Reuven, this little kind of smile illuminates. The general response is he's an extremely special young man. He's extremely bright, attentive, about midos, and a real mensch. You know, and they don't have to tell me these things, because they don't always tell me these things. And as one observes them, you know, the Maharal says that the word panim, face, the etymological derivation comes from the word panim, the inner part. Because sometimes when you see somebody, you know through the face, you see what's really going on. And when you look at Reuven, you understand that this is a young man who's committed to growth and to forging his path as a true Ben Torah. And once again, I haven't had the opportunity really, you know, to get to know his parents well. We will, yeah. But from what I see, in terms of their commitment to Torah, and I know the grandparents a little bit, it's clearly a mishpacha that is committed to Torah and to Chesed. And my bracha to you is that this wonderful jewel that the Ribono Shel Olam has given you, which obviously is a result of your tremendous efforts as well, that you should be zocheh to continue to have tremendous nachas from him, and that Reuven you should develop into a true Ben Torah. Mazel tov.
And now I would like to introduce the Rabbi of Young Israel and the Dean of Yeshiva High School, Rabbi Adam.
First, like to wish our best wishes of Mazel Tov, personal best wishes and best wishes of the congregation, Mr. and Mrs. Muller, the grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Deere, Dr. and Mrs. Muller, and of course to Reuven, the day of his bar mitzvah. May you have many times the nachas and joy that you're experiencing today. That we have the future to celebrate together such Yiddish simchas. Today, in the United States, it is a day of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, to give thanks, is a very important characteristic for a person to have and to appreciate. We heard Reuven express his words of thanks to his parents, to his grandparents, to his siblings, and the emotions and the feelings of parents are sure a bracha v'hodah to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And Jews are known to have hakoras hatov, to recognize and to be grateful for favors shown them. And therefore, indeed, in this day of Thanksgiving, we have to give thanks that we were blessed to live in a country where there's total freedom, where we'll be able to practice our religion as we feel, to be able to give our children an education that we hope that they grow up to observe. This is something that is not our due, but it's the grace of Hashem and of our host that we were given this opportunity. And there's a very interesting medrash in last week's Seder, past Shabbos. We read that Yaakov returns to the land of Canaan, and he dwells by the city of Shechem. Vayichan es pnei ho'ir, he rests by the face of the city. And the Medrash tells us that as soon as Yaakov Avinu set roots and established himself, unpacked, Hischil mamid chanuyos umoche bezul. He began to establish a certain economic system. He put up little stores and began to establish a pattern and to sell at a very proper price. Hador Omart, we learn from Yaakov Avinu, she'odom tzorik lahachzik tovo lemokim sheyesh lehanoah mimenu, that a person has to give thanks and to recognize his obligation for the place that he is able to have pleasure from. And it brings that, Medrash continues, that Reb Shimon ben Yochai and his son, who hid in the cave outside of Tiberia for many years, miraculous Reb Shimon ben Yochai, when he returned to Tiberia, so he said, immediately, let's come and contribute something to this city. Let's build, let's construct. So the son says, but what did we get from the city? I mean, we're paying for everything we took. We haven't lived here. What are they giving us? So he said, are we any different than our father Yaakov? It says that Yaakov paid for the field, yet he still felt the obligation of hakoras hatov. Even if you pay taxes. Thank God there's a government and a country prepared to give you freedom for the taxes that you pay. Therefore, a day of Thanksgiving is a day that we Jews traditionally appreciate. That is part of our heritage, part of our greatness, that we possess this midah, this characteristic of hakoras hatov, of recognition to those from whom we benefit. Yet, this can also exact its pound of flesh. For if we trace the history of the events in the life of Yaakov, we first read of Yaakov fleeing from his father's house, from the wrath of his brother Esau. And he comes upon the holy Har HaMoriah, and he has a dream of a ladder reaching into the celestial heights and the angels ascending and descending. Yaakov, realizing that indeed he is at the gates of heaven, so proclaims, this is the palace of God, the Zeh Sha'ar Shamayim. Yaakov dreams of angels, of ladders ascending to heaven. And he makes an oath and a vow that if God will be with him and he will return in peace to his father's house, he will then dedicate his life to the service of God. Yaakov continues to the house of Lavan, and we know the whole story, how Lavan was able to ensnare him and to trick him, and Yaakov still dealt faithfully and honestly with Lavan. And then Yaakov began dreaming. He didn't dream of the ladder ascending to the heavens, but he began to dream of the cattle. Are they speckled or not speckled? Will he be able to accumulate certain wealth? Then the angel of God says, Yaakov, it's too far. The mind that dreams of the celestial heights above the ladder has no place to dream of the nikudim, pluyim, ubrudim, of the sheep and the goats, speckled or speckled. That is not what is expected of a Yaakov. Return from the house of Lavan. Gather your family. Go back to Eretz Moladetecha, to the holy land of Israel, where you breathe the air of Kedusha, to the house of your father. Yaakov returns, and the first place that he settles is in Shechem. Shechem is indeed part of the land of Israel, but at that time the Canaanim were living there. Shechem was living there. It's a far cry from Beis Avi, from his father's house. You see, then Yaakov purchases a field, shows his gratitude to God, his gratitude to the people. But then tragedy visits the house of Yaakov. Vateitze Dino. Dino happened to walk out. She somehow was ensnared and caught by the people of Shem, by Shem himself. Yaakov in Golis. What is the answer? How can the Jew find a place of refuge where he could live the life? Freedom. Freedom to go in Shem. Yaakov had freedom and Dinah had freedom. But how do you retain your children when they're open to such a society, to such influences? When they walk in the street, when they turn on the television, when they look at the newsstands, when they hear of the daily murder count in the District of Columbia. How do you teach children dreams of ladders and angels if they find themselves in a society, a civilization, surrounded by nikudim, teluyim, ubrudim, by human beings who are speckled and speckled, people who have no concept of spirituality, a nation, a civilization that instead of the ladder descending higher to the heavens, the ladder descends deeper and deeper into the pits of depravity. How? How do we bring up our children in such a society, in such an atmosphere? B'shafti b'sholem el beis avi. I will return. If I return el beis avi to my father's house, if we give the child a home, a fortress, a strength of Torah and morality and Jewish ethics and Jewish values, if we surround him with friends and a community that preaches and teaches and lives the same values which we aspire that our children should adhere to. The Beis Avi, that is the salvation for the children of Yaakov. Baruch Hashem, Reuven has the opportunity to grow indeed in a strange environment, but Beis Avi, he has a home. He has, starting with grandparents and parents that appreciate the true value and meaning of life, that understand the importance of Torah and mitzvahs, that understand the ethical and moral values of Jewish life. Beis Avi, the strong foundation, the trunk. If the trunk is strong and firm and dominant, then the fruits that grow from that tree will be beautiful. That is the hope that we have for our children. We recognize, indeed, Vayiken es chelek ho'ir, Vayichan es pnei ho'ir. We recognize that society, civilization, our community, our government, has given us freedom, and we must respect that. In Judaism, there is no flag burning. We don't burn the flag of the United States. We respect it. We give it hakoras hatov for the millions of Jews who have found a haven of refuge. We have our allegiance. We give it our firm allegiance. But at the same time, we recognize if our children will remain true Jews, faithful to their beliefs and their teachings, we must provide the ancient traditional base of the Jewish home. We must provide a school, a yeshiva, a community, a shul, where the child can breathe and nurture the holy air, the air of Kedusha. And then his dreams, perhaps, will remain the dreams of a Yaakov, of the ladder ascending to the heights of heaven, recognizing that man's position on earth is to dwell in the Beis Elokim, the house of God, and to be a priest for the nation of God. Reuven, to help you in your quest for Jewish teachings, the tradition of the shul is that we give a sefer which is always wrapping in gift paper, but you should know that the sefer is Pirkei Avos. In this sefer, we have the ancient, traditional, ethical teachings of Jewish life. Take the sefer Pirkei Avos and study it. In that way, you will be a true son to your people, a pride, Klal Yisrael, and you will recognize your obligation of hakoras hatov to entire civilization, to society, and you will appreciate the air of freedom that we breathe today in this country. Mazel tov.
Rabbi Binyamin Sanders is Reuven's Rebbe and has a few words for Reuven at this time.
When Mr. Muller asked me to speak, so I was trying to decide what to say. I was thinking maybe something contemporary from a 7th grade point of view. The local sports club lost on Sunday. And I was thinking, today's Thanksgiving, we eat turkeys. Maybe that has something to do with the local sports club. Not a big fan of it. But I decided that for Reuven deserves a serious speech. And someone famous once said, I was trying to remember who and I couldn't. Someone famous once said that the longest distance in the world is the distance between a person's brain and his heart, from a person's head to a person's heart. And in my educational career, into my 5th year now, and I have found that to be very true. The boys, as they come and go, you see that some of them are farther along that journey. Some of them have made that journey and have started and are on a long way towards connecting those two so disparate areas. And in knowing Reuven the past 3 months, I must tell you that he's one of those that really has all the tools, that has come such a long way already towards reaching this goal. Just a very wonderful, pleasant, and charming character that really makes him gentle and kind and accepted by all. There's a pasuk that says, "Hadudaim nasnu reach v'alpsachenu kol megadim chadoshim gam yishanim ve'edit tzafati loch." The Sefer Bnei Yissaschar explains this to refer to the mandrakes that Reuven's mandrakes. He once picked some dudayim, and his mother Leah took them and used them to her benefit so that she had another boy named Yisachar. Hadudayim nasnu reach. Bnei Yissaschar says that a certain aura, reach, certain wonderful, wondrous scent surrounds and permeates this kind of an action. And certainly Reuven is certainly right along those lines. Shlomo Freifeld, Zichrono Livracha, my father's Rebbe, was once talking to a person who had a problem, and he told the person, be bigger than the problem. Don't try and solve it. Try to solve it, it gets difficult. Be bigger than the problem. And Reuven has that idea. He's right along those lines. In closing, I'd just like to say that a bracha to the bar mitzvah boys, the same bracha that Taka Reb Shlomo Freifeld gave me when I went away to yeshiva. He said to me, Benjamin, I give you a bracha, you should become a big Talmid Chacham. You're big already, he said. All you have to do is become a Talmid Chacham. Now one day I'm sure that bracha will be fulfilled. But I give Reuven the same bracha. And I say to him with the double meaning, I say that Reuven, you're taka big already, and he saying, you have the tools, he saying you should become a big Talmid Chacham.
Reuven, you alluded in your speech about the responsibility of the brothers Reuven, Yehuda, and Yosef. I now would like to expand on the subject of responsibility. Chazal, our sages of blessed memory, teach us that b'shvili nivra ha'olam, that we should feel that the world was created for each of us. This happens to be one of the reasons given that Hashem, God, created Adam alone by himself. In addition to feeling that the universe was created for your benefit, I feel that we must interpret it to also mean that each individual must feel that they are responsible for the welfare of this world. As a Jew, Reuven, you must include your responsibility to your people. It means committing yourself to attending the daily minyan. You must always make yourself feel that you are the 10th man, that without you, a person requiring to say Kaddish will be unable to do so. You must also feel responsibility for the absorption of Soviet Jews in Israel, and thus make sure that you allocate a portion of your earnings or allowances to the charitable organizations. Do not rely on others to invest in Israel. Your portfolio, when you get older, must include Israel funds. The responsibility of Yishuv Aretz and defending the land of Israel also cannot be relied on others. One person you can make a difference. When you go to college, you should choose subjects that are needed in Israel. As far as defending the land, in Devarim, the tribe of Reuven assures Moshe that even though they chose to live outside the promised land, they will join their brethren in their conquering. Our sages also refer to the secular world. You must feel that you alone are responsible for the moral fiber of this country. You must write to your congressman and president on important issues. You must feel that your vote makes a difference. This in a society that is very apathetic, apparent by the low voter turnout. Though Hashem created the world for the purpose of man, it doesn't mean that we can abuse its resources. You, Reuven, must feel that responsibility, whether it's turning out the lights or balancing the purchase of a vehicle between the safety of your family and the amount of fossil fuel it burns and spits out in our environment. You must take Chazal's teaching even to the workplace. You must feel responsible for the success of your employer. You must feel that your work alone is critical to its success, whether it's working in the mailroom or managing a major project. So, Reuven, welcome to manhood. Hashem has given a lot of responsibility to each of us. So far, you have a good track record. Your first 13 years have made your mother and me very proud, and we are confident that your next 107 years will prove you to meet these challenges. As for today, I have one request. Please turn out the light when you leave the basement. Thank you very much. We will now proceed with
attempt for the back light yet. Come over here. Back light will kill you. Go from the side.
It's with great pleasure that I welcome you here today to join us in celebrating Reuven's bar mitzvah. I just yelled. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you here today to join us in celebrating Reuven's bar mitzvah. It's especially meaningful to us to see so many friends and family. To see so many friends and family members who were present at our wedding and who were with us on that cold, snowy December day in Brooklyn at Reuven's bris. Reuven was born on a Shabbos morning about 2.5 weeks later than expected. We should have realized then that was Reuven's own personal style. We would spend much time in the future waiting for him to be ready. But just like that first delay, Reuven has never let us down. The wait has always been worth it. I can still remember hearing the words, "You have a baby boy," and feeling that a wonderful dream had come true. I very much wanted to name Reuven for my grandfather, Reuven Shear, who was a very loving grandfather to my sister and me. He was a very good-natured and gentle personality who greeted everyone with good cheer. I am happy to see Reuven emulating those good ways. I would like to now introduce the spokesperson for the Muller Children's Fan Club, of which Bernie's mom and dad are leading members. Their devotion to the cause has been and is greatly appreciated. I now call on Bernie's father, Dr. Alexander Muller, to say a few words.
As a grandfather to my first grandson who is bar mitzvah today, I want to say to him a few words. Dear Reuven, in the Parsha Vayeshev, what you are going to read this Shabbat in this synagogue, there is a story of Joseph, a Jew who was forced to make his way in the world apart from his family and as the safety of his home. Despite all of his difficulties, Joseph was a success. He had his principles, he never deviated from them. He was always a righteous person, and that was the key to his success. The Torah says, "Vayhi ad Hashem et Yosef, vayhi ish matzliach, v'kol asher hu oseh ad Hashem matzliach beyado." God was with Joseph, and he was successful, and everything what he did, God made him succeed. Joseph led his life based upon the values of his family, God and Torah. Joseph knew who he was, where he was heading, and why was he heading there. Reuven, this observation of Joseph, I am sharing with you on this day of your bar mitzvah. Like Joseph, you should cherish the values of your family. You should love and respect each other. You should work hard and be strong despite the difficulties of life, as your grandmother and me and many of your relatives did after the Second World War. As you know, most of our family perished in the Holocaust for Jewish share. Despite all of this tragedy, we had to rebuild our life. We continued to raise our children in the Jewish spirit. Your father and Uncle Peter attended Yeshiva Soloveitchik and Ramas. Your mother attended Stern College. You are too, as I hear, a good student at the Hebrew Academy Day School. Be proud of your studies. Be proud of your observance of Mitzvah. Be proud of your heritage. And most important, you continue to be a man. I pray that like this Joseph, may God always be with you and grant you much success, health, and happiness wherever you go, whatever you do, for many, many long years. I want to use this occasion to congratulate our son Bernie and our daughter-in-law Marion, who are bringing up such a fine family. You have taught your children what living a Jewish life is all about. You are dedicated members of the synagogue. You support Zionist and Jewish organizations. You are righteous and you are dedicated to life of Torah and Mitzvah. We are very proud of you, and we hope that Reuven and the other children will learn from your examples. We love you all.
I now take pleasure in introducing my father, Mr. Abraham Deere, who together with my mother convert their lovely home to the Days Inn on a moment's notice, complete with home cooking and babysitting. If you did nothing else for us but make Pesach, Dayenu, it would have been sufficient.
I know how you feel. Rabbi Anima, other rabbis who are here, ladies and gentlemen, there is a constant debate that goes on preceding Thanksgiving Day and sometimes even after Thanksgiving Day between the Richmond News Leader, you know, Richmond is where I come from, and some New England newspapers as to where the whole idea of Thanksgiving began. Richmond says it began with Pocahontas in Williamsburg, in Virginia. And the New England papers say that it began with the Pilgrims up in New England. They're both wrong. Because, as most of you know, every single day with Jewish people is Thanksgiving Day. We thank God 5 times every single day. Why should we wait until once a year to give thanks? However, inasmuch as Rabbi Anima sort of laid the foundation for this Thanksgiving Day theme, let me tell you why I'm going to give thanks. It was exactly 13 years and 2 months ago that I was confined to St. Mary's Hospital in Richmond with a heart attack. I knew that Marion was expecting a baby, didn't know whether it was going to be a boy or a girl. But as I was convalescing, it occurred to me, I hope I make it so that I can become a grandfather. Well, it was a boy, and I made the bris. And for that, I'm thankful. After the bris, I gave further thought, and I said to myself, will I make the bar mitzvah? Well, I made the bar mitzvah, and for that I'm thankful. I wish I had Rabbi Anima's ability to relate what I'm going to say now, but today is the yahrzeit of my wife's mother. And I suppose there is a relationship between that occasion and this bar mitzvah. I also, by the way, I may ramble in what I'm saying, because the last time I prepared a bar mitzvah speech was at my bar mitzvah, which was 65 years ago. However, there is something else which occurred to me. The tefillin which Reuven wore today, the parshas in that tefillin were written by my nephew in Israel. I am sure that, that my father never believed that his grandson would be writing tefillin for his great-grandson. I suppose that that is tradition in its finest sense. Inasmuch as this is the time for thanks, I would like to thank Alex and Elizabeth Muller for producing such a fine son-in-law. I want to thank Bernie, who knows the time for the minion without calling up to find out. I want to thank Marion for giving me 5 grandchildren. I want to thank all of the people who traveled considerable distances to get here, including my brother and sister-in-law who made a trip from Israel in order to be here. And Reuven, where are you? Come on up here. You and I both have something to thank you. Because you have a bubby who's the best bun-baking bubby between Broad Street, Richmond, and the Beltway. And we love you, and would you mind if I kissed you?
On Reuven's bar mitzvah day, you just got to say that Reuven's a brother that's better than any other. Sometimes he makes us sad, but other times he makes us glad. He always was Mom's favorite son, and he always was the tallest one. He can get the basketball through the hoops, but somehow he can't get his laundry through the laundry chute. He insists he can watch TV till late at night, but there he is on the sofa snoring with his eyes closed tight. His mind is always seeking heights higher, and that is why it is he we will admire. This special day in November, we hope you always will remember.